What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Tonight we're talking about a topic that I see quite a bit of, just what kind of tools do you need to work on these cars? Everything we do on this channel is DIY, with the exception of tuning, because I don't like messing with that. So overall, I've picked out 20 tools that you guys can buy for under $100 to do 80% of the work on these cars. Now, none of these are gonna be Snap-on. None of these are gonna be really high-end tools. I personally can't justify buying a high-end tool unless one of my cheap tools breaks, and so far that hasn't happened yet. So with that, we're gonna grab this camera and I'm gonna tell you the 20 tools you need to work on these cars to be able to knock out 80% of the installs that you're doing. So now that we're ready to kind of jump into it, I've got these categories broken out into a couple different segments. Now, like I said, you can pick up all these tools for around $100 to $150, and I'll link below just a good genre. Who doesn't like a good genre of tools? So I'll link below a good genre of these tools for you to pick up if you are looking to do some of this DIY stuff at home. Now, at the end of the video, I have a special segment of tools that are not going to count towards the 20, but they are just a good bonus of Subaru specific tools that you might be looking for later down the road. So this might help clear some air up for you. But for these categories, we're going to go into miscellaneous tools, which is going to be like screwdrivers, pliers, that kind of thing. Then we're going to go into wrenches and sockets. So to start with, we're going to jump into the miscellaneous section first to get that one knocked out. Now, for the miscellaneous section, I've got a plethora of 5 different tools here. The first is going to be just a standard metric Allen key set. You never know when you're going to need these. A lot of aftermarket parts that you're going to be buying come with Allen keys, and this set specifically goes from a M1.5 up to an M10, which covers pretty much all of the different Allen keys that you're going to end up needing to be able to install some of those parts. So with that one, I think you can pick these up for around 20 bucks. 10-20 bucks in there, so not too bad. Second one is just gonna end up being your standard flathead screwdriver. These things work wonderful for when you gotta pry stuff off, when you gotta take out some screws or whatnot. I don't know what you're using them for, but I use this thing quite frequently just to kind of get in there and pull some stuff out whenever it does get stuck. Sticking with kind of the handheld stuff, why not that? Clip pullers. These things are a lifesaver whenever you try to take off your bumpers. Those stupid like push rivet, hold up. These stupid like push rivet clips, I hate these with a passion. So this clip puller alleviates a lot of the stress of having to try to get a flathead in there and try to pry it out in all sorts of stupid ways. So grab yourself one of these. They have saved my life a handful of times. And then moving down the list of just kind of last handheld things is I use this little short stubby screwdriver for absolutely everything I do. I'm not a big fan of the big long ones or the other ones. 80% of the time, this gets the job done. And then lastly, just for that handheld stuff, I use angled pliers for absolutely everything. I have no need for normal pliers anymore. I can always get the job done with these, and they're always a lifesaver. The little angle on them does make for a big difference. Grab yourself a set, well worth it. So that's only the 5 handheld things. Let's jump into wrenches and then sockets. So now we're ready to talk about wrenches here. Now there's only 5 wrenches I have in my hand because these cars in front of these Subarus right here are pretty much made up of 4 different bolt types. Actually 5 different bolt types. So the majority of the time you're gonna need a 19 millimeter. I prefer ones with the ratcheting end on it. They make life a lot easier whenever you're trying to take those bolts off. These are primarily used on a lot of suspension parts, so they do make life a lot easier. The other bigger one that you see on a lot of suspension parts is going to be a 17 millimeter. These things are just wonderful to have, especially, like I said, grab yourself a ratcheting set if you can afford it, and if it's your budget, it makes your life a lot easier when it comes to speeding up taking some of those bolts off. Getting down to some of the smaller sizes, 14 is also going to be a lifesaver. A lot of suspension components, a lot of engine components, and a lot of other hardware is going to end up being a 14 millimeter wrench. Once again, spanner type if you can. The last 2 that we have for just wrenches is going to be a 12 millimeter. This thing, the whole car is pretty much made out of 12s, 14s, and 10s if it is not a major suspension component. Like I said, you can get 80% of all the installs you're doing with just these basic 20 tools that we're talking about. And then the last one is the holy 10 millimeter. Oh yes. Now with the 10 millimeter, I lost my ratcheting one, so I've been making do with just a standard 10 millimeter wrench. Still a lifesaver. Don't lose yours like I lose mine. But that's gonna be it for wrenches. Those 5 will get you 80% of the way through all of the installs you're doing. So with that, we're gonna jump into sockets and we'll wrap this video up with just talking about some of the specialty tools. Alright, so now we're ready to talk about sockets and socket wrenches. So I use a 3/8 socket wrench 99.9% of the time I'm working on these cars. This thing gets the job done. Now sometimes you're gonna have some of those bolts that are not always easily accessible. So with that, I recommend grabbing 2 different extensions. This one is I believe it's a 2-inch, and the other one I have is a 6-inch. With these 2, I can reach pretty much anything I need to grab. Then the last kind of just grabby bit before we jump into sockets is, I call them wobbly doos, but they're elbows. So these things go a long way when you're trying to get to just those bolts or those nuts that are just way out of reach. And sometimes you can't always get it up in there, but lifesavers. Now for sockets. So I have 5 different socket sizes here that you can do 80% of these installs with. 17 millimeter will go a long way with these cars, especially once you start getting under the car and you start getting into some of those suspension components. Between the 17s and the 19s, you're gonna be able to get a lot. Going down in sizes, a 14 millimeter. I use deep sockets when I can because sometimes you're gonna have to pull. It's just easier for me. You get a little more extension out of the socket, but if you want a shorter one, go ahead and grab a shorter one. Next up, 12 millimeter. Once again, like I said, these cars are 14s, 12s, and 10s pretty much all the way through, except when you start getting into some of that suspension components. And then once again, the holy 10 millimeter. I have had this thing for years and I haven't lost it yet. Goes a long way, will pretty much fit on a lot of the bolts in there. And then the last one I have for socket sizes is going to be an 8 millimeter. Now a lot of the hose clamps and couplers inside of that engine bay are going to be 8 millimeter bolts, and it makes life so much easier rather than using a flathead. So with that, that is all the sockets for the 3/8. The last one that I have is just grabbing yourself a small 1/4-inch ratchet set. Now I've lost some of these, the 8 and the 11 millimeter for some reason. Don't know why I lost the 11 millimeter, but that one has disappeared. But those 1/4-inch sockets are a lifesaver, especially when you're trying to get up under the car. That small little socket set saved my life when I did my Killer Bee oil pan. Ooh, made life so much easier. So with that, that's 20 tools. 20 different tools. You can do 80 to 85% of all the installs you're gonna be doing with just those 20 tools, and you can pick all those up for about $100 to $150. Ooh, that's just a good bang for your buck. So if you are a DIY person wanting to learn more and you don't have a big tool collection, you don't need to go out buy a whole bunch of Snap-on stuff or anything like that. Just grab these 20 tools. You'll be able to do so many installs when it comes to these cars. So with that, we're gonna jump into the specialty tools real quick, which are somewhat just Subaru related, and then we'll wrap this video up. Oh! Okay, so as I grabbed some of these tools, I kind of realized they're not all just Subaru specific, but these pinch weld jack mounts are a lifesaver. I work in a very small garage out here. It was built in like the 60s, so I don't have a lot of width in here. So this thing it comes in handy when I have to use a small jack to be able to get under the car. Use your pinch welds, just make sure you're using them right. Oil, filter, sockets, make life easier. Not 100% required, but they do make life a lot easier when it comes to pulling off those oil filters when you're doing those at-home changes. That way you're not having to smash a screwdriver through the oil filter, use a strap wrench like I did a couple days ago. So grab yourself an oil filter wrench. They do make life a lot easier. Now this one is very Subaru specific, but the Company 23 Quick Fuel Line Disconnect Tool, this thing has been a lifesaver on multiple occasions when I've had to disconnect fuel lines if I'm troubleshooting, installing, just anything like that. It's cheap. I think you can pick those up for around $10 to $15 and they go a long way. Just make sure you don't lose it because it is a small part. Next up, we have 4 different sockets here that are kind of Subaru related, but they do go to other applications. Now the first one's going to be a T70 Torx bit. This thing comes in handy whenever you're getting into that transmission. T70 Torx bit is the drain bolt down there, so that socket is kind of specialty. It's really the only thing I've ever used it for. Another specialty one that you'll probably use somewhat often is a 10 millimeter hex bit. This one's 3/8 because I prefer the 3/8 ratchet over anything else that I'm using, and it just makes pulling out some of those other drain plugs in that transmission differential and a couple other areas throughout the car a lot easier. And then the last kind of specialty tool that I have here is a 5/8 deep socket For the spark plugs, if you are wanting to do your own spark plugs, I highly suggest getting one of these because it does make life a lot easier. This thing has made it through like 9 different of my Subarus that I've had, and it's always been a champ at pulling out those plugs. But with that, that's all I got for you guys for these tools. Like I said, if you are a DIY mechanic, these 20 tools will get you so far when it comes to installs on your parts. You don't need fancy snap-on wrenches, you don't need fancy impacts, you don't need air or anything like that. I started out doing this stuff in a parking garage in my old apartments. Not even a parking garage, it's like a parking stall, the little overhang things, but they go a long way. So with that, let's wrap this video up and get this tripod back on the bench. All right guys, that is really gonna wrap it up for this video. I didn't want to take too long going over this, but if you are a DIY mechanic or you're wanting to learn how to do some of this stuff and you are just starting out, those 20 tools will get you very far in your just mechanical adventures of taking things off and putting it back on. Now, like I said, you don't need to go out by Snap-on Milwaukee, all these really high-end tools. I don't own any of those, and these off-brand AutoZone, O'Reilly, and Amazon tools have built me this. They've built me this thing. So with that, that's all I really got for you guys. If you guys like this video, you know what to do. Go ahead and smash that like button. Go ahead, hit the thumbs up and turn that little thumbs up blue. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to be, let's do this corner right up here tonight. Because it is a little cold and I want to get back inside. But with that, I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out, homies. Woo!